Anyone here ever been overwhelmed before? Anyone overwhelmed right now? Because that's what I'm talking about tonight. How to work with feeling overwhelmed. Now, the reason I chose this topic was I was leading a retreat, a 4-night, 5-night retreat, whatever it was. I just got back the other day, and I was preparing for this retreat. And I was trying to finish this project for a master's degree program, doing all my part for this big end of the class project, and plus do everything I need to for here, plus a bunch of other things I needed to get done. And I was feeling like, whoa, I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed. This is a lot. So I got good at working with overwhelm as part of my practice before I left to go on the retreat. Oh, and then trying to prepare for the retreat too. Well, what I didn't realize is that when I got back from the retreat, I was going to get hit by a bunch more stuff. That I'm doing this group project, and my other two partners in the group, who, since I had done 90% of everything up to that point, and I basically handed them all the information that they needed to finish the project while I was gone for 5 days. It's due today, the project. And when I came, they said they were going to do all this work, get it all done by the time I got home. I got home all blissed out because I've been, in the meditating 4 or 5 hours a day. That was pretty exhausting because it's a lot of work leading a meditation retreat. It's intense. From 6 in the morning till 9 at night, basically. But anyhow, so I get home, and then one of them says, we're not supposed to meet tonight, are we? Because we were supposed to meet and just finalize the project. That's supposed to already be done. The project that's supposed to be done. We were just going to clean it up a little bit. Get out, just clean it up. Anyhow, so one says, we're not supposed to meet tonight, right? And I said, yes, we're supposed to meet. And the other says, well, we need to meet to get all this work done because I'm leaving on vacation tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, what work? So I looked at our shared Google Doc, and guess how much they did while I was gone? 0. Just a little tiny bit. Anyhow, so I was past day and a half, 2 days trying to get this project done. Now once again, like, oh yay, I get to work with Overwhelm, which is perfect since I'll be talking about it Thursday. Yeah. Overwhelm happens. That's the first point that I have up here. Like, if you're a human being living in our society today, if you haven't felt overwhelmed, you're probably comatose. Right? We're living in a pretty fast-paced world. We have a lot of responsibilities, even if we're retired. We have to take care of all of our needs, our food needs and our work needs and our taking care of the house and everything needs. Whereas I'm sure and we have to go places and do things. And we have a lot of responsibilities. In the old days, big families all lived together, and everybody had their own chores that they did, so it was divided up amongst a bunch of different people. And even though they worked really hard, I have a feeling that because they had such a large group sharing all the responsibilities, it seemed a lot easier than it does today, because most of us have to do all of it ourselves. So yeah, overwhelm definitely is going to happen from time to time. It's just something that we deal with our practice. The first thing is, second point that I have on here is to, once you notice you're overwhelmed, you want to look to see, is this self-created overwhelm? Or is this just happenstance, that a bunch of conditions just happen to come together all at the same time and coalesce in such a way that, oh my gosh, how did this all need to get done today? So sometimes that happens not by our design, but just by happenstance. So back in, I think it's really important to look at our patterns. Like, do we necessarily set ourselves up to be overwhelmed on a regular basis? If it's not, if it's self-created, then this is a pattern that we have regularly. Perhaps we overcommit a lot. Maybe we're chronic overcommitters. Maybe we're very positive people, and that conceptual idea of what we can do is way different from reality. Anybody done that before? Right? So maybe we're not operating from grounded reality. Maybe we're operating from what we think we should be able to accomplish, and so we put too much on our plate when we do this. Right? I was raising, years ago, when I was a single parent, raising 2 children by myself, working 50, 60 hours a week, running 9 Subway restaurants. And I was, you know, my meditation practice was my sanity, my mainstay. And going on 3-4 retreats a year were my vacations, you know, where I got respite and rejuvenated. But I was pretty, you know, busy and overwhelmed often. And then I got married and I moved away to Raleigh, and he said, you don't have to work, just take your time building your business, because I wanted to build a business consulting business, life coaching, business coaching and consulting business. So I thought, well, this will be easy, I'll be relaxed, I'll take my time building this business. I was just finished a 2-year degree and coaching degree. And guess how many hours a week I started working on building up my business? 50 or 60 hours a week. I became obsessed. I was like working, trying to, you know, get the websites all designed, developed, and all the marketing, and teaching all these classes online, and doing an online radio program, and going to all these events. And then I realized, wait a minute, because I had this practice, what's going on? I'm overwhelmed, and I'm retired. Okay? So then I realized that the common denominator was me. That I was in the habit of being busy and overwhelmed. And so I decided to start breaking that habit and start finding balance in my life. In fact, that was one of my favorite presentations or workshops that I gave, was creating work-life balance with organizations. So that's been an important part of my practice, because I saw how I was self-creating a lot of overwhelm for myself. So that's the first thing you want to do, look and see whether you're creating it. Well, when I was creating it, I also had to look to see how it was I was creating it, what was underneath that, which I'll talk about. Processing the pain that's motivating the busyness and the overcommitment and the overwhelm. There's going to be some stress there, period. If it's self-created, then there's probably going to be some pain underneath the stress. If it's not self-created, then you just go and process the stress, the anxiety, and the body and the mind and the heart will calm way down. Okay? When I was, for my senior project in my degree for psychology, I did my senior project on self-efficacy and did all this research. And what I found out with this project, and self-efficacy is believing in yourself and believing that you can go be successful, or believing that you can finish something, or believing that you can handle something, right? And what I found out was that people who had higher self-efficacy had a lot more confidence. They were a lot more successful in life. They accomplished tasks with greater ease, and they were a lot less overwhelmed and stressed than people who had low sense of self-efficacy, right? So the people who had low levels of self-efficacy tend to suffer with a lot of self-doubt and fear and worry and anxiety. So I was like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. You know, this was 20, 30 years ago, but I was like, I don't have a lot of self-efficacy. So that became a really important thing for me to say, well, how can I improve my self-efficacy, sense of knowing that I'm going to be okay in the world and that I can handle whatever arises and I can do whatever I choose to do. Whether I'm successful or not is beside the point. So is there a low sense of self-efficacy that's motivating overwhelm? You know? If you have a lot of high self-doubt and a lot of low self-efficacy, you could start overcompensating. Ways that you could overcompensate is becoming the perfectionist. Any recovering perfectionists here? You guys are sitting together. Or if it becomes too overwhelming, then you just kind of avoid dealing with anything and start using some tactics in order to numb out and avoid maybe getting high or drinking or binge watching or whatever you do to avoid dealing with feelings of overwhelm and self-doubt and low self-efficacy. I had, what I found when I started processing my overwhelm was I found that I had a very high fear of failure. And so this high fear of failure had me feeling a lot of overwhelm whenever I tried to accomplish anything, because I was scared to death. What if I fail? What if I fail? What if I fail? And you know, we can go back and look at how I was raised and the conditioning I had, which was each one of us had to be number one in everything we did. And if we weren't number one, then we shouldn't even bother. That was the message I was getting growing up. And you can't be number one all the time. You can't, you know what I mean? So I had a really high fear of failure, because chances are I was going to fail a lot, because I'm not going to be number one at everything that I did. So I had to learn how to process this fear and work with this unrealistic expectation of being the best or number one or perfect in every way. So do you have a pattern of overcommitting, right? Agreeing to things, just you're a people pleaser who says yes to whatever anybody asks you to do? If so, then you probably become overwhelmed from time to time. Take on more than is possible to humanly complete. Yeah. And you know what? This is pretty much culturally conditioned and respected in our culture, if you haven't noticed. Being overly busy. Have you noticed that? And overwhelmed. I mean, when I'm like, oh, I've just been so busy. And then they start telling you all that, and that's just how we, oh yeah, well let me tell you how much I've been overwhelmed with, you know? So we kind of like, oh yes, let's share our overwhelm with one another. And I think that becoming overly busy and a little overwhelmed, because it's culturally acceptable, it's a point of pride in our culture. The more we can accomplish, the more we can churn out, the more respected we are, you know? So Your sense of overwhelm might just be a habit. It might just be a habit of trying to be like everybody else in the world. But if you bring mindful awareness to it, you'll notice how much pain and suffering this habit causes. Because the adrenaline and the cortisol and the trying to keep up, and then the mind doesn't work as well when we're cortisoled out, and then we get cloudy thinking, and then we make mistakes, and then we run out of the house without all the stuff that our note, shopping list and all the stuff we're supposed to do, or the deposit we were going to make at the bank. And it causes a disconnection too, a real deep disconnection with ourselves, with others, because we can't be intimate with anyone, vulnerably connected, because we're like, gotta do, gotta do, gotta do, gotta do, gotta do. I had one friend, one buddy that I do Taekwondo with, I called him Mr. Gotta Do. I said, there's Mr. Gotta Do. Because every time he sat down, he was like, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. Anyhow. So Pico Iyer, the famous world travel writer, he says, we're moving at the speed of light and not the speed of life. I love that quote because it's true. What is the speed of life? Truthfully, when they study the brain chemistry and what little I know about neuroscience, the brain is wired to perform and focus on one task singularly at a time. We're not meant to multitask, and multitasking causes stress, causes a lot of anxiety, because the brain can only focus on one thing at a time, and then we have to collect all of our energy, pull it off this one thing, switch it over to something else, and then try to refocus all on this other thing. It takes a lot of energy to do that. And then we throw all of our energy and focus off that thing and switch it back to this other thing, but still part of our energy is on this thing, part of our focus. And so we get distracted and exhausted with this constant trying to refocus and trying to refocus and trying to refocus and trying to refocus and trying to pull all of our energy with us. Hyper multitasking takes us out of the moment, so we can't be present with any one thing we're doing because we're constantly thinking about all the different things we have to do at one time. And it throws us in the mental conceptual realm instead of the experiential realm. The mindfulness realm is the experiential realm, right? So we move from being here present, taking care of this task, to, oh, what do I gotta do, wait a minute, I'm gonna do this, so all of our energy goes up here, which causes anxiety and stress. Being in the mental conceptual realm can cause a lot of stress too, and anxiety. So what is this like? This is like if you were a car constantly trying to push your engine to go 10 or 20 miles an hour faster than your car is meant to go. No wonder we feel overwhelmed if we're addicted to being busy. So a lot of times when we're unable to deal with inner tumult or pain that's been unprocessed from our life, from trauma or difficult grieving events, we will unconsciously avoid dealing with this pain by staying busy. This is unconscious, by the way, or being overcommitted. Here's Per Valiat Khan. Overcome any bitterness that may have come because you are not up to the magnitude of pain that was entrusted to you. Like the mother of the world who carries the pain of the world in her heart, each one of us is part of her heart and therefore endowed with a certain measure of cosmic pain. You are sharing in the totality of that pain. So we have this um, cosmic pain that all humans are subject to. The Buddha calls this dukkha. And then when we can't deal with our cosmic pain and all the other pain that we've crunched on, added to this big pile of laundry, dirty laundry, we start staying overly busy, really, really busy. And then as soon as, if we're addicted to being really busy, as soon as we sit down to rest, what happens? Fall asleep. Well, for a few reasons. One, we're exhausted. And the other is our subconscious mind is now going to put us out so that we don't have to feel the inner pain when we slow down, when we stop. A lot of people, I had a previous ex that every time we take the weekend off, he'd want to do all kinds of projects. And I'd be like, no, let's just rest and relax and listen to music, maybe go watch a movie or just sit here and stare at the sunset. And he would start crying and crying and crying. I'd be like, are you okay? And he's like, I can't stand this, I have to be busy. Then he would get up and start. He didn't say I have to be busy, he says I have to be active. I was like, oh honey, this is really good for you. But he didn't see it that way. When I was in the state of overwhelm, I was a master of anxiety and restlessness. And that was my hindrance that I was trying to avoid dealing with. Because every time I would rest and relax or sit down, I had to deal with anxiety and restlessness really intensely. And then when I started processing this pain, I found so much grief and sadness underneath this anxiety. You think it's anxiety. When you go beneath it, it's something else. Right? A lot of hurt. This retreat I just led, there were 28 people there. I did personal interviews with everyone. I would say that at least 70% of the people were struggling with anxiety and restlessness. Like, oh God, I'm going crazy, being here. I'm so antsy, restless. Yeah, and that's because of our state of the way we live our lives. Doing too much, being overly busy, not scheduling in enough downtime. The other 30%, not all of them, but the majority of the other 30% were disappointed because they weren't getting enough juice. They were looking for some big insights or some big exciting events to happen while on retreat. So a whole bunch of anxiety, restlessness, because they're overly busy. The others are like, hey, where's the juice? Yeah. So the third thing is to process this inner pain. Process this inner pain. When we go to the sense of overwhelm, we do RAIN technique. We recognize the sensations related to this sense of overwhelm, accept and allow them to be there, investigate all of them with curiosity, our experience with curiosity, and do this all with a nurturing and loving awareness. Right? So, feeling overwhelmed, I've had the opportunity to do this the past couple of weeks. Stop, take a few deep breaths, just rest and relax, close my eyes. Oh, Where are the sensations related to this overwhelm? Feel them, allow them to be there. There's tingling, there's pressure, there's pain, there's pulsating, there's shaking, there's anxiety. Oh, wait a minute, there are emotions here. There's anger! There's a lot of anger here. Where's the anger located? You know, so you sit and you process your experience for a few moments. Okay? And then after you do that, guess what happens? Usually, all the sense of overwhelm just drops away. And then there's just this clear, energetic being that says, okay, I'll get this done now. Right? But we have to recognize we're overwhelmed to begin with. And then when we get overwhelmed, just take a few moments to stop and just feel where is it located in the body. Are there any emotions here? Holding it all with really nurturing, kind awareness. Thich Nhat Hanh says, only through acknowledging and opening to suffering can we stop and come to rest. Can we find stillness and a deeper ground of goodness and well-being. It is the suffering that prompts us to let go, to live more lightly. By touching this suffering, we can awaken the fullest compassion within us. So we don't want to just rearrange the chairs of the deck on the Titanic. Right? We want to actually go to the suffering that exists from this overwhelm. And usually we'll have insights like, oh, there's fear of failure here. When we're processing it, we'll find what's motivating that overwhelm, the pain that's motivating the desire to overcommit. If there's any there, it might just be a habit. So number 4, schedule breaks into your life. Schedule breaks. Like tomorrow, I don't have anything on my to-do list, except for meditating. And I'm not going to do anything tomorrow. I need this day of simplicity, of silence, of connection and camaraderie with others. And only going to do things that bring me ease and joy tomorrow. Okay? Mindful walk. What brings you ease and joy? 1 or 2 words. Nature, being out in nature. Painting. Painting. Nice. Exercise. Good. How about reading a good book? Eating a delicious meal that you just prepared?
A meal that somebody else prepared?
Especially if someone else prepared it. Having a conversation with someone you love or enjoy. Meeting with a friend. A delicious, hot, steaming cup of coffee, tea, Java. So I like to schedule time periods during the day when I'm not responsible for anything. So in the morning I have a routine and I will not break that routine. And I won't schedule anything else. I was telling Wallace this. I wake up at 6 in the morning, I go to the gym and I work out, and I enjoy my workout. And I come here and meditate for an hour and I enjoy my meditation. And I go to the coffee house and I have my cup of decaf. And then at 11 o'clock, I get in my blocks. I used to run track, lift up, and then I take off and work for the rest of the day until about 8 o'clock usually. But I schedule that time of simplicity and no responsibility. I will not check my email, right, during this time. I had this lady, she was a friend of mine. She was a friend of mine. She called me one day and I answered the phone. She said, "Why aren't you checking your email?" I was like, "Excuse me?" She's yelling at me. "Why didn't you check your email? I've been emailing you. And I was like, "I don't check my email until the afternoon. You know, if I check it, if I get a chance to check it at all, I don't check it till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon." Here's, I'm pro relationship, anything that makes you happy. And I have nothing against marriage. I just haven't, succeeded at marriage. But here's a quote: "The secret of a happy marriage remains a secret." The Buddha factor in simplicity is an important part of the spiritual life. The disciples were allowed to own 3 possessions: their robe, their ropes, their bowl, alms bowl, and medicine. And that was it. And they lived very simplistically out in the woods. They didn't have possessions and things to take care of. And very simplistic. When I was a nun, I definitely needed a hat on my little bald head because I was cold. I don't know how you men without much hair handle that, but I was very cold. I needed shoes, I needed warm socks, I needed undershirt, I needed an overcoat. So I think I was a higher maintenance monastic. I had more than 3 possessions. You want some more marriage quotes? Okay, marriage is a 3-ring circus. Engagement ring, wedding ring, and suffering. Oh. That's maybe not that good. It may be just coincidence, but man's best friend, the dog, can't talk. So how can you simplify your life? What can you let go of? And what will happen if you don't get that one thing you feel like you have to get done today, do or die, right? And number 5 is daily meditation practice. We can't process this underlying pain if we don't have a daily meditation practice. It's great to do it when we sense, do rain when we sense overwhelm, but if we have a regular practice, it actually changes the structure of the brain and the mind and calms it down so that you end up seeking silence. You end up seeking quiet. The more you meditate, the more you want to be alone for periods, the more you want to simplify your life. Because when we meditate, just this mere act of focusing on our breath, opening to the present moment, we start to be aware of what's most important to us in life. What's more important to us in life is not our things, and it's not our to-do list. It's the people we love, the relationships we build, how we treat one another, how we're walking through life, what legacy perhaps we're creating each moment, each day. So keep coming back to the moment in your daily meditation practice, keep coming back to the moment in your daily life, and start to experience how life is living itself and expressing itself through you. This is a miracle. It's an amazing miracle that this unfolding, we don't know what's going to happen the next minute. We don't know what thoughts or feelings or how the next person's going to react to us or the weather. Even the best weather app isn't always right. Right? Feel the joy that's here to feel. Feel the pain or suffering or the neutrality or whatever's here to feel each moment. And this will become, you'll naturally start to simplify your life, and you won't be getting yourself caught up and overwhelmed as often. Here's Thich Nhat Hanh, and then I'll close. An old man in Thailand drew a picture of a happy, smiling Buddha on the wall in his cave, and under it a most peculiar saying, "Oh, joy to discover there is no happiness in the world," was his saying. What could this mean? It's an acknowledgement that there is no lasting happiness because of the eternal truth that nothing lasts. Only when we stop running and accept that life with all its dance of change, its 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, with its inherent suffering and inherent joy, only then can we find peace and wisdom. And there's a lot more to it than this, but this is a really good place to start. So thank you for listening. So let's open it up to share.